70s, peaked around 1995 when we had the famous Beijing conference. And we still continue to talk about the participation of women in our political spaces over a period of 4 decades or probably 5 decades. And this afternoon, we want to look at electoral gender quotas and the way to go in creating balance in African parliament and decision-making spaces. And as we would know, electoral gender quotas are measures put in place to increase women's activity or activeness in political representation. And globally, there's a limit to women's influence in parliaments and decision-making spaces due to their low participation, even though their participation is very important for achieving equality and equity, as much as giving some ballast to their rights, privileges, and responsibilities. And it has been observed that where women participate actively in politics and decision-making, their own issues are raised and are being tackled to find meaningful solutions to them. This is certainly a road to ending gender discrimination, especially action of gender quotas has increased over the period, especially in some of the countries that are progressive. But arguably, there are lots of questions to ask, and eyebrows have been raised, controversies especially surround the election or the selection of these women, especially if we take the case of Uganda, where you have lots more women getting representation in the National Assembly. The ruling government has come under a lot of flack for allowing women who are affiliated to the Museveni party to have that opportunity. So if you are not or belong to that particular party, it is increasingly cumbersome to have a space at the table. So what this webinar seeks to do is to critically digest the issue, whether or not it is critical or it has become increasingly important to find a workable means of allowing the space for women to participate in political decision making. And this afternoon, I have been joined by some eminent women, and I would do the introduction in a bit. But before that, I would want our senior programs officer at the All Africa Students Union, Veronica Gia, to welcome address, which will be done briefly. Then I'll come back and do the introduction properly. So if give us a welcome address and in short summary, tell us the essence webinar. Hello, Vero, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello? I can hear you.
Yes,
can you hear
yes, kindly go ahead. Yeah, Vero, yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank
yes,
you very
we
much.
can hear you. So, okay,
All right. Thank you very much and good afternoon to everyone. On behalf of the leadership of the All Africa Students Union and the Gender Working Group, I would like to welcome all of you to this afternoon's webinar, which is looking at electoral gender quotas. Bridging the gender gap and ensuring gender equality and promoting the role of women are core elements of ASU's activities to augment efforts to achieve SDG 5 and Agenda 2063 aspirations. Women's political participation results in tangible gains, as has been mentioned already, and the benefits are wide-ranging. The presence of more women in parliament has contributed to the adoption of laws that address women's interests in the areas of gender-based violence, land rights, family law, women's enhanced engagement in political activities, and so on and so forth. Even though experience has taught us that women members of parliament are just as qualified as their male counterparts, we realize that in most African countries, the percentage of women in parliament remains low. And therefore, we have put together this webinar to find out why this is the situation and together look at the way forward. I use this opportunity to welcome all of you once again and look forward to very insightful discussions this afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carol, so much for that brief introduction. But I'll go on quickly and introduce to our viewers and listeners like the personalities we put together to discuss this afternoon's program. I know that they are individuals with immeasurable understanding of subject matter. And they will discuss it dispassionately, give us all the figures and the data, and at the end of the day, provide us with some roadmap for the conversation on electoral gender quotas and gender in political spaces. Now, let me take the opportunity to introduce Madam Ruth Ambogo. She's a governance expert, a lawyer, and a youth and women advocate with over 5 years of experience in championing and advocating for the rights of youth and women, with a special interest in the rights to inclusivity in political discourse of the youth, as well as consideration of youth interests in national policy and freedom from discrimination and marginalization. Madam Ruth Ambogo presently serves as the Executive Director of the Center for Advocacy and Awareness on Youth Rights in Africa. Her interest in governance stems from her desire to champion and be a part of building a value-based governance system focused on promoting the rule of law, inclusivity, human rights, ethical conduct, transparency, diversity, sustainable development, and sound financial management. Ruth champions for and holds public servants to account on these values through her weekly contributions to national discourses on mainstream media and through public forums. This is quite an extensive career, or I'd say activity in advocacy focused on subject matter. I believe that all of these experiences we should bring to bear on this afternoon's program. Madam Ruth, if you can quickly give us a minute's reception acceptance of this profile.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this conversation. Personally, I say it's a very timely conversation because a lot of African countries, as has been mentioned by the lady who gave the introduction, suffer from imbalances in terms of gender representation within their political decision-making spheres, and pretty much any decision-making sphere that is critical towards, coming up with policy and basically coming up with solutions to problems that society faces. So we lack, women in critical decision-making spaces, and having this conversation is probably one of the ways that I hope, can spur as many people as possible from various countries to begin thinking about how can we advocate for more women representation in Parliament or in critical decision-making spaces wherever we come from. So I look forward to an engaging conversation, and a conversation that is geared towards trying to find the solution to this problem that has been with us ever since most African countries, or most if not all African countries, attained independence and are able to represent themselves politically. So I look forward to a good conversation. Oh, and just to mention, I think just one more thing that should have been mentioned in my introduction is that I'm also a political, I'm an aspirant for the coming 2022 general elections in Kenya. Yeah.
Wow. Yes, that certainly is not a profile we should have missed, but we would add it up to what we already have, and that we wish you all in your political endeavors. Thank you very much, Madam Ruth. Quickly, I'll move over to introduce my own woman I admire so much, Madam Joyce Bawa Mokhtari. Madam Joyce Bawa currently is the special aide to former President of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, and she also served as a former transport minister in the John Dramani Mahama government. Prior to her appointment as deputy minister in May 2013, she was the head of the legal department and solicitor secretary of the Ghana Shippers Authority. She holds an Electoral of Laws degree, LLM, in International Maritime Transport Law from the IMO's International Maritime Law Institute in Malta. She is an alumnus of the University of London's Holborn College and the U.S. International Visitor Leadership Program. Madam Bawa Mokhtari also has a Master of Arts in International Peace and Security from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Institute. Hello, kindly put your mics on mute because I'm getting a lot of feedback. Hello, please. If you are on, kindly put your mics on mute. If you can hear me. Someone's mic is on. Kindly put it on mute. All right. Kindly accept my apologies for that interruption. Madam Bawa also advised extensively on financial transactions, corporate acquisitions, mergers, and amalgamations. As an experienced mediator, she has mediated several cases, both locally and internationally, and is currently a senior managing partner at Praetorium Solicitors, a boutique law firm in Ghana. Madam Bawa has represented Ghana at a number of diplomatic conferences and meetings, and advised extensively on the adoption of international maritime transport instruments, and conventions, and participated actively in the working of the development of the Rotterdam Rules from 2008 to 2012. She has also served as an expert for the Ghanaian Admiralty Court and Organization IMO. She is a member of the African Women Lawyers Association, the Women in International Shipping and Trade Association, the Ghana Bar Association, Gonja Land Youth Association, and a fellow of the United States Association International Visitor Leadership Program. During her term of office as Deputy Minister for Transport between May 2013 and January 2017, Joyce was responsible for the formulation and dissemination of government transportation policy for implementation by the 15 transport sector agencies within various modes that the ministry had oversight responsibility of, namely aviation, maritime, inland waterways, railways, and road transport. Finally, Madam Joyce Bawa served on various boards, including the Ghana Shippers Authority, the National Lotteries Authority, and the PSC Tema Shipyard Company Limited. Madam Bawa, quite an extensive and elaborate retinue of activities you have embarked on over the years. We welcome you to this afternoon's engagement. Madam Bawa. Hello, Madam Bawa, can you hear me? I think we can hardly hear you. I know probably you would have to unmute your mic, please. Yes, Madam Bawa, kindly unmute your mic.
Okay. Hi, hello, good morning. Can you hear me now? Hello, good morning.
Yes, loud and clear. Thanks for joining.
That's excellent. So thank you very much for having me. It is always a pleasure to have an opportunity to have conversations around quotas for women, women's representation in politics, in decision making, and what have you. I have lived both of these lives extensively. I've lived as a career woman, as a public servant, as a private legal practitioner, and I am currently living in politics and in career. I do have a very fair understanding and assessment of exactly what this conversation should be about, what we should be focusing on, and how we can together move forward in creating better avenues for women, in particular, females, to have a voice at each and every opportunity, each and every table, and certainly have better conversations that actually focus more on matters to do, not just with women, but of course, general issues that matter to people generally. I think that we've come quite a long way. We have tried very hard to make some inroads. Challenges still exist. Ghana, for example, has tried for the last 10 years to pass an affirmative action bill. The rest, as they say, is history. I look forward to a robust conversation and certainly looking forward also to engaging Ruth after this particular conversation. Once more, a very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for having me, and hopefully we will have some very great responses and answers at the end of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Joyce. That was a spirited response to your introduction. We like that, and we are hoping that you can keep the tempo at that level for us for the next one. But Madam Joyce, I'll still continue from you briefly. You would need to tell us, how has the journey been for you? Since you decided. I remember meeting you once. I think that was around 2014. I was a student leader by then, serving as the national president for the Ghana Union of Professional Students. Very receptive. You would always welcome us into your office, and almost always around to offer the kind of assistance that any student leader or group of students would want. Has this been a part of, how has this inspired you, or when you started your journey as a politician, or not necessarily a politician, but someone who has been an advocate for women's participation?
Oh, it has not always been easy, but of course, it hasn't also always been as challenging for me as it's been for other women. I think that I have come from a very strong background of a very, very active and impressionable young woman, and now actually in my mid-career life sessions. I think I've actually tried very hard to remain as positive as I've always been. I think underlying all of this has been my level of ambition, courage, and interest in all matters that have to do, not just with me as an individual, but passionate also about the things that matter, socially, economically, profession-wise, academic-wise, name it. I think I also have a gift in being a very, very personable person. I think I take my attitude very seriously. I've tried very hard to work on myself, and especially to work on improving myself. Engaging young people and engaging different scores of people really actually crafts in me a better outlook on life. But let me say one thing, that having come into politics, sometimes you'd find that people even forget that you're actually a very successful career professional, that you have actually made this transition because you believed in a cause, that there was actually a need for not just women's participation in politics or in the public space, but certainly that a certain type of woman, a woman that inspires others, a woman who has her own aspirations. And my journey in politics has also been a way of coming into my own aspirations for myself as a person. In the sense of it, there has been a great example that I think my life has become also for others. That is not to say that this journey has not been fraught with some challenges, but I have actually stood very firm. I've come to a point where I walk into a room and you find that I forget that I'm actually the only female in that room. I'll go on forever and then suddenly I'll realize that there's just you in the room that is female. This is the sort of thing that I think I struggle to change and I struggle to amend. We look at the statistics around us, not just in politics, in business, and it's not just in Ghana. You look across the world generally, and you find that in Ghana currently in our parliament, we're doing 14%. That is actually woefully inadequate. You look at Europe, and they are on 24%. Not good and not bad. So something needs to be done. I think also that the pandemic has also created a certain impression too, because you'd notice that in Europe, in the Nordic parts of Europe in particular, suddenly women leaders have emerged. Indeed, even in the handling of the pandemic, you'd find that women leaders have received the most accolades. Take, for example, Angela Merkel of Germany, who received the longest standing ovation on the day when she announced her retirement from being one of the longest and most successful female European leaders. We still have memories of the Thatcher years in England. So certainly women do have something. I think that this week we celebrate Ghanaian women in particular and women in Africa because the University of Ghana, in its 73-year-old history, now has a female VC. And I think that is actually particularly insightful. It is revealing. It tells you that when women are given an opportunity, when we are invited to the table, we would and do normally excel. We have the same qualifications. We have the same acclimatization. We actually live in the same cultural environments. But sometimes just the mere fact that you are a woman, you are female, it is actually already a certain disadvantage for you. Look at the cost of contesting even to sit in parliament. Look at the competition in our political parties across Africa and across the world. You know that no man is going to say that because you are female and you are Joyce, I'm going to allow you to contest in my stead. They are going to match you boot for boot. What happens then is that women, as we all know, would want a level playing field. What we will not engage in is all the nefarious activities, the underdealings and underhand things. That usually is a challenge. But I would say one thing. I believe that indeed the future for a woman is bright. The future for a qualified woman is even brighter. The opportunities exist for us, both in politics, in agric, in economics, in science, name it, and we stand to excel. What we require is that the opportunities should be made available. Where there is a need to engage a new vice chancellor, let the women be advertised for. Let there be a certain deliberate effort to find the very best woman, if it is possible, to occupy this position if it is available. I think these are the sorts of conversations that I expect that unions such as yours will start. I also hope that research will back these conversations so we find a way to encourage other females. I have had conversations about women not being interested or women not being active enough, of the fact that there are opportunities where women are invited, and for the same patriarchy, the same culture that has actually withheld and held back a lot of women, people will still decline on the basis of religion, family commitments, and children. I have 4 children. I have tried to navigate my career and tried very hard to remain as positive as I can be. I think that I've raised and continue to work on a way that allows me to live, to live by example. I think that politics really is where great and engaging and developmental conversations are taking place. We have a constitution of 1992 that actually admonishes us to avoid any types of discrimination. It actually encourages us to encourage participation by all genders, irrespective of creed, religion, or whatever affiliation, etc. But what has been challenging is that when we finally struggle to get the right economic balance, the right social balance, the right family balance, and we are ready to step up to the plate, you find that many obstacles are put in the way of the woman in particular. I think what society should start to focus on is the things that make women different. Ethiopia has proven that when it comes to keeping corruption at the lowest level, you are better off engaging more women. When you have a larger cabinet with more women, perspectives are different. They are warmer, they are softer, they are more genuine, they are more sincere. And you can look around you in how funds, even for COVID management, have been utilized, how the pandemic has been managed, where the focus has been in terms of what should be done and what should not be done. Once more, women have stepped up to the plate and done much, much better. I celebrate Ghanaian women because I believe strongly that we have come of age where there is enormous support for a woman in leadership, a woman in parliament, a woman in politics, a woman in development, and a woman in a Greek. Remember that even in our very, very rural communities, most families are women-led. What it has happened is that even though they are the breadwinners, you find the male counterparts who will ensure that they determine how the monies or investments raised by women folk are utilized. And then when it comes to decision-making, you find that women in these communities are likewise marginalized. It is actually a toast to our democracy that we now have female queens and queen mothers who form a very, very, very prominent aspect of our traditional societies and our cultures. Some of them are actually very modern, very, very broad in outlook, who encourage at all levels deeper participation and engagement by women. So the constitutional provisions notwithstanding, the legislations notwithstanding, there are some very, very critical decision-making bodies that still allow and build enabling environments for women generally. What we are yet to achieve is to achieve numbers equivalent to our men folk. I think that is really the critical question. Why are we still failing to engage that critical 50+% of our population that makes up women? Why don't we have more of them in a 273-man parliament where we can only boast of 40 women, and we actually even call this an improvement? That is woefully inadequate. When you look at ECOWAS, when you look at the African Union, when you look at all of these commissions, you find that there's always a lot more men than women. It is also a testament to the strength of the Committee of Nations that the UN actually has strategically sought to engage in great leadership positions, key females across the world. I think that is an example that we can all take away and focus on, that this should tell us that every effort is being made. One, to create opportunities. Two, to allow for an enabling field so women can operate. Three, to encourage better assimilation and participation by women folk. I hope that we will all continue also as individuals. Look, go to other jurisdictions. Take, for example, the United Kingdom. I use the UK because at least I studied there and I lived there for a while. When you leave governments at any level, you are well qualified, and using myself as a very humble example, you'll find opportunities that people are looking for you to serve on their boards, to serve as a director, to serve as a patron, to serve as a trustee. Sometimes you take up these appointments even at no fee to the institution. It's not the same this side of the world. You will struggle even to find business when you leave political office. You will struggle to find a job when you leave political office. You'll find that even colleagues of yours, professionals, are now a touch reluctant even to deal with you on a professional basis. I asked a friend of mine a few days ago, why would someone like me not serve as a consultant to the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement headquarters, for example, or to that office, or to any institutions even affiliated to that office? I have a background in maritime and in shipping and international law. I am a lawyer. I have many years of experience. I am very well qualified. I believe that I'm actually a very positive example of how a person in political office can be used to serve as a stepping stone for many others. But even then still, it remains a challenge. So you try as much as possible to transition, but you must also be conscious of the ramifications, of the effects of transitioning into politics, for example. And it is actually one of the main reasons why a lot of women may be reluctant. You are probably on a career path. You're on a certain trajectory. You are earning a certain income. You're used to living a certain way. You'd come into politics and find that you have, yes, a better platform, a platform like no other, to be an example, to be worthy of emulation. Look at the great examples of women in parliament, right from the days of Osajifo, when he himself in 1959 decided actually to invite 10 females to sit in the 114-seat parliament at the time. This was just so that he laid emphasis on the contribution of women to the struggle for independence and the need for them to have a voice that will be capable and worthy of being heard. That conversation started over 60 years ago. We're still having that conversation, and we still do not have commensurate numbers of women to the ratio of men in parliament. We do still need to do more. Will this actually be cured if we have a legislation such as the Affirmative Action Bill passed into law? Will that help? Do we start with our political parties? And I recall that the National Democratic Congress and the National New Patriotic Party had at some point reserved some positions beyond or beside the women's organizer position to be occupied by females. The NDC in particular created a space for the positions of vice chairpersons of the party to include women. And certainly the NPP did likewise. Our CPP and other political parties have at each time tried very hard to create a certain platform and give some prominence to women and our participation in politics. But all in all, I don't think that the story is one of celebration, at least not yet. We need to pause. We need to ask ourselves, why are we not doing 50% or 40% in a 273-member parliament? Why do we not have more women leading our various political parties? Indeed, the NDC had a female running mate in the last election. And I believe that it is actually with enormous pride that I say that that woman was actually the very first female vice chancellor of a public university here in Ghana. She rose through the ranks, retired, came into politics as a Minister for Education, and eventually agreed to serve as running mate for one of the largest and most successful political parties here in Ghana. So each day we toast the contributions of someone like Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. Before her, we had Madame Joyce Rosalind Aye, we had the Haji Adiza Munkailas, we had many other women. Today we have Madame Eslo Usu, a lawyer and a very senior most politician. We have many of these examples. Hajia Lariba Ayamba, one of our strongest female members of parliament. She's still in parliament and going strong. But the sad trajectory is that when you take some constituencies, for example, the region where I hail from, that is now the Savannah region, previously the Northern region, we have just 2 females as members of parliament. The Ashanti region has a few more. The Central region has made every effort. And of course, of the 16 regions that we have, we should ask ourselves, how come that we can only boast of 40 female members of parliament, 20 on each side of the political divide? So in that sense, we are actually both not doing too well when it comes to the female slots. I think a lot more needs to be done. Maybe forums such as yours will grant opportunities to positive thinking females to share ideas, to share experiences, and to encourage younger females to aspire to be part of the public discourse, the public conversation. And yes, you will definitely lose some business. You will lose great opportunities, because certainly our democracy is also that of a multi-party kind of system, where you'd have to decide whether you want to be CPP, for example, if you're Ghanaian, or you want to be NDC, or you want to be MPP for that matter. For my part, I am NDC. There are many other great women who are in the NPP, and many of them are doing amazing things. Ajua Safo, a young lawyer, is a member of parliament of one of the largest constituencies here in Ghana. She's currently the gender minister. So we have many examples of females across ages. There's a young former SRC president, Esinam Siad, who is doing very, very well, very dynamic. I've seen many flyers all around of young women contesting for NUGS, contesting for SRC, for GRASAG, and many of these other, offshoot platforms that not only train, but encourage deeper participation by females in politics. But certainly, we are not there yet. I think it is a conversation that has been going on for years. I think we need to start to see the benefits. Funding is a challenge. Patriarchy is a challenge. A certain type of effort to sort of denigrate the contribution of women is subtle. It may not be as topical. It may not be as obvious or direct, but it is there. I remember that years ago when I became spokesperson for the former President John Dramani Mahama, I was actually one of the very few females to occupy that position. I know how much I struggled to be recognized and to be taken seriously. But prior to that, I'd also served as the communications spokesperson for the party in our 2016 election campaign. I believe that there is a way that somehow people still try very hard to reduce or somewhat not so much celebrate the contribution of women to the success of our political parties. But I also ask myself, what will the political parties look like if they didn't have any contribution by women beyond being, of course, the reserved position of a women's organizer of a political party? I think that we've come a long way. I think that these conversations are very important. I think the statistics paint a very dark picture. And in stricto sensu, I want to go back to the days when we had a female speaker such as Her Ladyship Justice Bamford Addo. It was a fantastic time for women who aspired to be politicians, for example. I remember the examples of Madame Hawa Yakubu of blessed memory, and what a positive example she was then, not just as an independent parliamentary candidate, but of course, when she even transitioned into a member of parliament for the New Patriotic Party. I also recall the examples of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, from Vice Chancellor to Education Minister, and of course, as a former running mate in the 2020 general elections. I am sure that many more examples abound. I'm looking forward, because of course, even before Nana Jane, remember that we had, for example, Dr. Parkway Sindum, who had a female running mate, but yes, the party did not have representation in parliament, and so it was relatively a very, very small political party. They have continued on that trajectory, and in 2020 also, they had once more a female, flag bearer. But yes, because it was also a relatively very small political party, because you do know that in Ghana it's a straight-laced competition between the MPP and the NDC. So yes, we must also as women start to work more on being more competitive. I believe that the opportunities are there, but I think we need to step up also. For as long as a constitution enjoins us to work on equal numbers, on equality as a basis for our development, as long as women constitute at least over 50%, and of course we've just had a population census, I'm sure that this number will probably go up. But of course, conservatively, we've always known that in Ghana, for example, there's more women than men. So certainly we should have this trajectory, this statistic. It should actually count for something. It should actually be representative across the board, in politics, in media, in education, across all facets of our development. We should encourage more participation. So yes, the University of Ghana is still a fantastic example, because I'm told that now they have about a 5-strong female leadership now actually holding the fort at the UG. The Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology also has a female VC, and there's many others. We have actually made some great and subtle inroads, but there's a lot more that we can achieve and achieve together. I get very passionate whenever we speak about advocating for the cause of the female. I think that as we are balancing for better, we should seek to balance for deeper participation and engagement for our women folk, not just in agri, not just in the economy. I mean, look, go around all the markets, for example. They are all led largely by women folk who manage the affairs of this economy, especially in the informal sector. In Ghana in particular, the lead market organizer is a female. She's straddled that industry for the last 35 years. A great model of excellence, a great model of discipline, and she serves on many platforms, working to encourage deeper participation by women, and especially encourage more females onto the decision-making place. I remember that years ago, our president generated a huge debate and caused enormous opprobrium when he said that women actually were really not amplified. We're not sure whether he was referring just to Ghanaian women or women generally. I remember his comments were received with deep, deep and wide criticism. But certainly, we do know that Ghanaian women and women everywhere are indeed very, very amplified. There are many examples of women with great voices who are engaging in all facets of our development. In private, in public institutions, there are many women, in the banking sector in particular. And it was a beautiful thing to realize that there are these African banks, huge conglomerates, that are all led and manned by female executives. So there are some awesome voices out there, great leading women and females contributing their quota daily to our development. The young ones are not left out, and I love the activities of student politics and student politicians, because it is actually one of the best training grounds for women or females who genuinely have an edge and would love to be competitive enough to participate in this very difficult terrain called public politics or public service. It is never an easy calling. And certainly remember that women also have many other challenges. They have to straddle family, they have to straddle raising children at every given point. And that within itself remains one of the key stumbling blocks. It is the reasons why many people should make every effort to make life of the female in public service or in politics one that actually is more based on opportunities and platforms being reserved. But of course, there are also those schools of thought that disagree, that they want it to be a level playing field. If I am a female and I believe I'm as good as any man, I should be happy and willing to contest, to compete, and expect to win. I believe that these female VCs are going for the interviews. They are clocking successes on all the key tangents that are required. And yes, they are gaining the jobs based largely on competitiveness and the fact that they are competent and well qualified. So maybe they step into those shoes knowing very well that they are well qualified or more than qualified to be in those. Because certainly you and I both know that if there is a man of better standing and didn't have all the challenges that we have as mothers and as wives, maybe the job might go to them because one, people will think that they'll be 100% more committed. But that is no longer the case. I believe that a lot of women in our public space are making great sacrifices. They are relying heavily on their partners, on family members. They're even taking their children to schools much earlier than in our mother's days. And my mother still tells me that kids should only start school when they're at least 2 years old. But I always argue that my son started school when he was 1 year and 5 months, because at the time I was just starting out and I believe that it was the best decision I ever made. I believe that women will always juggle with these choices, but let's not allow those choices to become a clear reason for keeping us out. We must find ways to encourage. Remember that when you succeed also, your family succeeds. You become a great example also for your family and for your children. I am still juggling. And man, do I juggle. I juggle in the morning, I juggle in the evening, I juggle during the week. I am always juggling. But I would say one thing, that I will not change a thing. And I have no regrets whatsoever. I believe that women do need to participate more, that more examples should come on board, that women actually set examples where there aren't that many. And I do believe also that women certainly do a better job and are just as competitive as any man out there. I think that we should continue to encourage by example, by creating opportunities, by invitation, by whatever means, but there must be a certain deliberate effort to encourage and further participation by women, by girls generally. I think that it is the only way the society will actually fully realize the balance, the equality, and above all, the level of amplification that we all so much desire for the female voice. Thank you.
Oh, Madam Joyce, that was indeed very passionate. I'm sure if you were doing this in person, the applause would have been very sounding. But thank you so much for piecing together what I call some historical antecedents. You provided the structural reasons, the political reasons, sometimes even the subtle reasons, just like you said, especially commitment issues. I don't know why commitment should be a problem when it comes to electing or appointing women, because even the men are faulty of full commitment. I thank you, and I'll quickly move to Madam Ruth. I am very much interested in the politics of Kenya, maybe probably because my graduate research took me to doing some work a bit remotely around Uganda, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, and a bit of South Sudan. And I know how sketchy the Kenyan political terrain is. Very masculine, very brute, and sometimes can be very aggressive. And the 2007 post-election violence provides us a sober moment for reflection. And if you want to track the development of politics, especially post-1962-63, the Jomo era, then we dealt with Arab Moi briefly, and Mwai Kibaki, then came in Uhuru, and the partial agreements we would see in 2013, you would find that the apex of the politics in Kenya are dominated by men, and it is deeply ingrained in ethnic fiber. as a woman, you have just indicated your decision to run next year. How are you going to navigate the ethnic issues, the masculinity, and the fact that it has been increasingly difficult for women to penetrate the politics of Kenya? Can you take us on a journey on how it all began for you, especially situating your journey within the torrential Kenyan politics? But before I let you speak, I want to say that our Secretary General, H.E. Peter Christy Koji, is on this call, and he's also enjoying, he's just sent me a text, he's enjoying the session, especially the one that Madam Joyce Bauer just delivered. And our Secretary for Gender and International Relations, Madam Minjil Mbuthia, is also listening, watching far away.
Hey, my name is Joe Nuts. I'm here to learn. What are we learning?
All right. Can you, Madam, you would have to kindly put off your mic. We have a session for Q&As, questions and answers. So when we get to that session, I would allow you to ask your questions. But this afternoon, we're speaking about gender representation in Parliament, and also opening up the space for women to participate more in political spaces. Earlier on, we heard Madam Joyce Bauer spoke, especially putting the Ghanaian issue in context, providing us with historical issues, the structural issues, the psychological issues, and also the socio-economic issues. I'll come back to and ask her specifically why and how we can solve the problem of the economy, the social issues, and how that would inure to more numbers in Parliament by women. So when we get to that point, I'll allow the participant to ask questions. But I'm getting back quickly to Madam Ruth, if she's ready. Kindly take us on your journey as a politician in Kenya.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And once again, I'd like to thank Honorable Bauer. She's really given, a clear scope of what things look like in Ghana. And just before I start, I must mention that, Ghana and Kenya actually share quite a number of similarities. And a lot of times when countries are ranked, even in terms of economic performance, a lot of times when comparisons are done in terms of how, nations are progressing towards implementing certain core concepts within their countries, politically, socially, economically, Kenya and Ghana are usually ranking close to each other. So we share a lot in common with Ghana. And a lot of things she was mentioning when she started, I heard her mention that, for the past 10 years as a country, they have been trying to implement gender quotas within Ghana. And I pretty much laughed because it's the same situation back here in Kenya. We've been trying to implement, gender quotas for the past 10 years, trying to come up with legislation, and that has not been successful for us. We've not succeeded at the same, despite, the constitution clearly giving a timeline as to when the same should have been implemented. So we do share a lot of similarities. And just to jump into answering the question, which is what has been the experience for me and how did I get to this point of joining politics, and also just to generally comment on the Kenyan political space and how it is all set up. I'd like to begin by saying that I am one person who, from a very young age, a very tender age, I was very much interested in leadership. And I think I just came up as a natural leader from the time I was, in my early years of education. Leadership skills were noticeable in me from the time I was at the primary level of education. And I think I usually tell people that I began realizing, the critical point of discovering that I had leadership skills in me, or I had an interest in especially political leadership, came at the campus level, where I ran for student leadership in my first year of school. And for me, the motivation at that particular point was to be in a position where I could be able to influence opinion, I could be able to influence, some change, and just be able to touch lives of a few students, try to support a few students through their academics, because the position I held came with a program that was supporting students, where we would fundraise money to assist students who are in need, and basically help them, finish their education by offering them bursaries. And for me, that is where the concept of leadership just, pretty much was birthed in me. I came to the point of realizing that if a mere, student leadership position was putting me at a platform where I could assist so many people be able to achieve their dream of finishing education at my university, then I was now thinking about what if I was in a bigger position of influence where I would be able to influence, a lot more lives of a lot more numbers of people, or just be able to bring about change in a bigger capacity, pretty much, in a bigger capacity. And I remember in my first year, I think it was in my second year of law school, we did a unit where we were pretty much defining what politics is. And for me, that also was another awakening moment that came up for me to just think about politics as a path that I would pursue, where, our lecturer was just defining to us, giving us the various definitions of politics. And the one that stood out for me was basically politics being an avenue through which we decide, who gets what, when, and why, And he went ahead and defined it as one of the biggest platforms to bring about the biggest change to the greatest number of people. So I was looking at myself at that point and asking myself that clearly, by that time, I had already had an interest in bringing about change within the community. And if politics is going to give me a platform where I can bring about the greatest number of change to the widest, number of people, or to the widest community of people, then that is the path that I would naturally pursue. And I then now started looking for mentors within the political sphere, engaging with leaders here and there. My university was set up in such a way that we would have programs and initiatives where we would have leaders and lawyers and people just from all spheres of life coming to our school once a week, to the law school once a week, and issuing lectures to the students. And at that point is where I would say I got exposed to political leaders, because a few times we would have political leaders come in, we would have senators walk in and give us lectures on what they do. We would have even former presidential candidates come in and talk to us. And so that's where now I got to pick a few leaders to mentor me. And I began my journey. And once I exited student leadership, another critical moment for me in my political journey was when now, upon exiting the student leadership, I now jumped into the youth leadership space, where I joined various youth organizations and youth groups and youth formations that would champion for the interests of the young people, that would come up with programs that would engage the youth in the governance space, and would basically start up conversations that involves the young people on issues affecting us as the youth. And that again, brought about, increased my interest in politics. And flash forward 2017, the 2017 elections marked what I would call my debut into my experience with national politics. In 2017, as some of you might know, we had our elections, and the candidates that were vying, the two major candidates for the elections were the current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and Raila Odinga, who once served as a prime minister. So at that point, I would say was my debut into my experience with national politics, because I joined now what would now be the opposition, which is now Raila Odinga's camp. And we came up with a political lobby group of young women where we would, establish, lobby groups across the country of young women who are campaigning for Raila Odinga to become the president of the country. And, because of my enthusiasm, my commitment to the campaigns, I got appointed as the Secretary General of a group that was calling itself Daughters of Raila. And that gave me the experience of going across the country, mobilizing young women, talking to them, training them on how to engage voters, and basically just engaging voters across the country, coming up with systems and establishing platforms where young women across the country who are interested in the candidature of Raila Odinga would now get to engage and campaign for Raila Odinga. And for me, at that point is when I came to realize that, first of all, politics is not many women were not many women knew how to go about, politics. Very many of them were scared. Very many of them knew what the political terrain comes up with. The violence that is visited upon women during campaigns, and not just women aspirants, but even women who generally participate in the campaigns. I remember one of the experiences I had at that time was one time we had gone to the western side of the country, and we were setting up a chapter, one of the, a county chapter within the western side of the country. And it so happened that during the weekend that we were setting up that county chapter, the president had gone to that particular region to campaign. And we were seen as, we were causing a lot of, we were basically causing a lot of interest with our activities at that particular county. And we got arrested, because of just doing normal, campaign activities where we're campaigning for our candidate. And we got arrested, and, it took a lot of phone calls left, right, and center, a lot of trying to, getting our leaders involved for us to be released. And, some of our members were beaten up by the police. And that for me was my first experience with violence within the political campaigns space within the country. And then later on, now after the campaigns or during the campaigns, I now got into the media space, deeply got involved in the media space, where I would, frequently be called upon to comment on the happenings across the country politically, to comment on the direction the country is taking. And of course, some of you might know that we had a little bit of unrest after the 2017 elections that led to what is famously known as the handshake government. The president and the president and the second runners-up basically coming together and trying to resolve their differences and coming together to form one big sort of, I don't know if I should call it a coalition, or they came together and resolved the issues that they had between themselves. And since then, we have now been at a point where we are not having a lot of political unrest as one would think about it. There has been quite some silence, and things have been working normally until now that we are now getting closer or inching closer towards our elections that are coming up in, next year. So for me, my decision to vie came about in November last year. I officially announced that I would want to join politics. I would want to vie for a political seat last year in November. And all along, I would be invited to, interviews, and I would talk about violence that women faced during the campaigns. I would talk about the struggles and the barriers that women face in trying to access political spheres, in trying to get elected as members of parliament. And for me, I think back then it was just theory. I would comment on it was pretty much a theoretical perception of what was happening. I would read about it. I would hear people's experiences, but I did not know that once I would put myself out there and say that now I'm vying for a political seat, that I would actually become a first-hand witness as to all these things that I have been talking about over the years. First thing that happened when I declared my interest in vying for a political seat was I started getting a lot of interest, from all over. There were people asking questions about who I am, what kind of experience do I have. A lot of concerns were raised about my age, because I'm pretty young, and in our country, politics has almost over time been a reserve of persons of a particular age or women of a particular age. If you're a woman and want to join politics, it's almost as if there is some unspoken about age gap that is set for women who want to join politics. And if you have not attained that age, then it becomes problematic. In my country, we have traditional mindsets that have dominated the political sphere, especially when it comes to women for a long period of time. For instance, when you want to vie, you're asked questions such as, where do you come from? Are you married or not? And if you're not married, if you're married, you're being told to go get, vie. Let's say, for example, if I'm born in Nairobi and I want to vie in Kisumu, or let's say I'm born in Nairobi and I am married in Kisumu, which is also one of the major cities in Kenya, and I'm married in Kisumu, then if I go, if I want to declare my interest to vie in Kisumu, the people from Kisumu will tell me to go and vie where I was born. So if I decide to switch my decision to come and vie in Nairobi, the people in Nairobi will tell me to go and vie where I am married, So for women, it becomes, these are some of the barriers that we face as women getting into politics. The other reality that hit me as I was joining this race is that we have a society that has been compartmentalized to believe that, for one to succeed in politics, they have to offer money, they have to part with a lot of money. So you get into the race, you think you're coming up with fresh ideas, you think you're coming to offer solutions, you think you're coming up with a particular, you're coming up with radical changes or a radical mindset, or, you're offering better leadership or a better option of a leader as opposed to the persons who are currently in office. And you meet the reality that the Kenyan political landscape is such that if you don't have money, you cannot succeed at getting elected, because you get in, you declare your interest, and automatically what happens is that the society begins to look at you as the solution to all their problems. On a daily basis, you're invited to WhatsApp groups where you have to contribute for funerals, you have to contribute to school fees fundraisers, you have to contribute to people building churches. So on a daily basis, you have almost 10, you have not less than 5 requests from different people asking for money for different things, some of them not even being genuine. So that alone, that poses a challenge for most women, female politicians, because for a long period of time, and this is true for Kenya, is that women have not really been the ones who control huge sums of money in the country. Basically, it is the men who control the economies of scale. And it is only recently that we are seeing women rising to positions where they can earn as much money as possible or engaging in business. And it is a recent trend that, most women are now getting into business. But we still haven't gotten to a point where women can come together and say that, we have this pool of funds that we can dedicate towards supporting female aspirants, as opposed to male aspirants who already have circles of influence where they can ask for millions of shillings and the money is raised in a matter of hours, and they can be able to, continuously engage in their political activities. For women, it's different. For women, it comes with a lot of challenges. When you want to raise funds, you reach out to people who could be potential donors to your campaigns, and you face a lot of challenges. People view you as a sex tool. There are times when I have been introduced to potential, donors towards my campaigns, and you get there, you are elaborating what your agenda is. You're telling people what you will offer them. You're basically telling this group of people who can support your campaigns what your manifesto is, what your plan is, how you intend to bring about change within the position that you're vying for. Then, 2-3 meetings down the line, you realize that they're not even interested in the agenda that you're putting forth. They're interested in you as a person, and you ask yourself, is this really the position that I would want to be in? So I would want to say 7 months down the line, I have faced so many challenges. You are attacked based on your looks and appearances. You're attacked based on your age. You're attacked based on the social circle that you keep. You appear in a meeting with a political aspirant, tags are thrown at you. You're told that, you're either, people come up with all sorts of propaganda and rumors about how you are involved with this male politician sexually. So it's almost as if each and every move that you make is watched. And unfortunately for me, it's only been about 7 months, and I've already also experienced physical violence. And sadly enough, one would want to think that this violence mostly comes from men. But unfortunately for me, the position I'm vying for is a position that is at the reserve of women. It's a woman's, it's called woman representative position. So basically, those who vie for that seat are pretty much all women. So I have actually gotten to a point where I have faced physical violence, and this violence has not come from men, but from fellow women aspirants. And for me, when that happened to me, I actually realized that, violence, when you talk about women facing violence within the political space, it's not just violence coming from the men, from men, but even women themselves can be agents of violence against their fellow women aspirants. So there are so many challenges that women face. Currently, as it stands, just to give a picture of how the Kenyan political space looks like, as it stands right now, we only have 272 elected members of parliament, elected women leaders out of 1,883 who are all elected across the country. We only have 172. And this is deemed as an improvement from the last elections of 2013, where we only had 145. So out of 1,883 elected. And our constitution, our new constitution that was promulgated in 2010, tried to come up with measures and ways through which the whole question of gender disparity within the political space can be resolved. And there was a lot of non-discrimination clauses that were included in the constitution, and a sunset clause was issued for Parliament to be able to enact legislation that would ensure that we have at least not more than 2/3 of the same gender represented within Parliament. And this is both at the National Assembly at the Senate and at the county assemblies. So looking at that particular provision within the Constitution set a sunset clause of 2015. By 2015, basically, Parliament was expected to have enacted a legislation or legislations or an act of Parliament that would guide how this principle of two-third gender, this two-third gender principle would basically be implemented at the National Assembly and at the Senate. So far, 10 years down the line, we've only managed, because those of you who understand Kenya's governance system, we do have, we do have the Senate, the National Assembly, and then we have county governments. So we only have implemented this two-third gender principle at the county government, where upon, an election, once an election is done, the numbers come in, if we realize that, a particular county assembly has not achieved two-thirds, that's, a third, basically, if they don't have a third of women represented at the county assembly, then what happens is that women are nominated to fill up those positions so that we get to have, at least a third of them, a third of women within county assemblies. That has been achieved at all the county assemblies. All the county assemblies within Kenya, the 47 of them have, members of county assemblies, MCAs, who are women, and they all meet the third principle, basically. But then at the Senate and the National Assembly, which is where most legislations are done, which is where the policy work is done, which is where, the change that you would want to see happen across the country is initiated at, we have not come up with a legislation. And what this can be attributed to is the general lack of political goodwill, where you find a lot of bills have gone to Parliament, and there have been discussions about the same. There have been, back and forth conversations on those bills. But when it comes to the voting stage, you find, parliamentarians boycotting Parliament and not taking it seriously. We've had a lot of court rulings and judgments that have come from our highest court, the Supreme Court, basically advising the president to dissolve Parliament, because Parliament, as it stands right now, is not constitutionally constituted, like it is not properly constituted to run business. So for the past 7 years or so, we've been having that back and forth, within courts. We keep seeking advisory opinions from courts, and the courts keep saying that, this the two-third gender principle needs to be implemented. But we are getting into the 2022 elections, and there seems to be zero hope whatsoever of that, two-third gender principle being implemented. So, and what I honestly, my opinion about this has always been that, what society is not realizing is that this two-third gender principle applies to both genders. What if we actually get to a point as a country and get to a point where women have gotten to occupy political spaces, and the society's mentality about women's leadership has changed, and we are getting in, more women being elected to the point where we have more than 2/3 of the women in Parliament. The men will get to the point where they'll start complaining and asking for representation, or asking for equality within Parliament in terms of representation. So it's not a rule that is meant to just favor women only, but it is a rule that over the years, as time goes, anything could change. I keep telling people that society could get to a point where they realize that women actually make good leaders. And I'd like to just make reference to what Honorable Bauer said earlier on, that, this COVID-19 pandemic was one of those situations that have come about that proved to the world that indeed women leaders actually do a good job in terms of leadership when it comes to resolving crisis, and when it comes to crisis moments, that women leaders have actually, a lot of women leaders across the world came up as good examples of leadership. They proved to the world that, when you give top leadership to women, especially during crisis moments, women make better leaders in crisis moments. And we are generally, as the world, operating under crisis mode right now. And for me, my guiding philosophy in life when it comes to leadership, I've always said that, if you want an issue resolved, if you want a problem, if you want to get a solution to a problem affecting a group of people, then the best person to give the responsibility of resolving that problem is the person who suffers the consequences of that problem the most. And by that, I mean that, for instance, I'd give an example of, if you go to our rural areas in Kenya, and I believe this is the same situation in Ghana, for instance, the question of water problems, water supply problems, I don't know how prevalent it is in Ghana, But in Kenyan rural areas, that's one of the problems that women have to deal with a lot. When it comes to accessibility to water. Accessibility to water is a big problem. You have communities where women have to walk hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, or pretty much long kilometers, to access water. And when you look at how that affects the woman, because in such communities, it is the women who are charged with the responsibility of taking care of the family, meaning for them to access water, they have to wake up very early in the morning. They have to involve their school-going children to, to take on the same endeavor with them, wake up very early in the morning to walk tens of kilometers, hundreds of kilometers to access water. If the water resolution problem is charged to a male who does not engage in the day-to-day activities or in the day-to-day hassles of ensuring that water is available in the household, then they will do a poor job of ensuring that proper legislation or even policy is put in place, or plans to ensure that water is accessible to women. But if you give that responsibility to a woman, for instance, now you appoint an officer or a minister at the county level, if you are to give now the environmental minister at the county level, to give that position to a woman, she'll be able to execute it better because she understands the struggles of accessing water. For another example would be peace resolution within communities and countries, for instance, that have faced a lot of violence. Most times when violence occurs in countries, people who suffer the most are women. Sometimes I look at the example of Congo and how the war that has been ongoing in Congo has affected women. Most times when war takes place in such countries, the women are the ones who suffer the most. Women and children who have to remain back, take care of children. You hear of cases of women being raped during war, women being displaced from their families, most of them, basically suffering the consequences of war. So in such countries, the best people to give the positions of, for example, the Minister for Justice or the Foreign Affairs Minister would be a woman, because in such a situation, it is a woman who would understand the value of peace in a country, because she is the most affected. So there will come a time when society will realize that most aspects of the community and most aspects of the society and most development areas or decision-making areas within a community are better handled by women. Healthcare, for example, the healthcare of this country and even most African countries, there's always been a joke that if you're in a family where there are daughters and sons and the parents fall sick, most times the people who will step up to the occasion of taking care of the parents are the daughters in the family. They're the ones who will probably abandon whatever they're doing, go back home, stay with their families, make sure that their old aging parents are taken care of. Within the family setup, it's the women who take care of the health care of the children. So in most countries, you would expect that the ministers of health would be women. So I think as a society, the sooner we realize that most issues across the society that affect the community tend to affect women more. And if you want a solution to a problem, give it to a person who is affected most by that particular problem. In Kenya, we've had examples of women who have, shown us what female leadership can offer for the country, and they have been celebrated even globally speaking. One of the key female figures that we know of, and I think even in Ghana, some of you might know her, is the late Wangari Maathai, who was a key, an iconic champion for the environment and conservation of an environmental conservationist across, who is basically renowned globally speaking, because she even won a Nobel Peace Prize for her activities in pushing for the conservation of the environment. Some of us here in Nairobi, within the city, when we usually look at Nairobi city and we tell ourselves that if Wangari Maathai's efforts, if she never took up, her advocacy efforts and activities to champion for environmental conservation, Nairobi would pretty much be a desert right now, and even the few rivers that we have would have dried down. And when Wangari Maathai wanted to get into political leadership, she faced a lot of challenges. It actually took her a lot of years.
You would have to round in a minute, please.
Oh, sorry. It took her a lot of, let me just just wrap it up. It took her a lot of years to actually access a political leadership position, and she only managed to become a member of parliament in Kenya after so many years, and during her sunset years, that is when she actually accessed a position of member of parliament. But there have been counties in Kenya where women have been entrusted with some of the top positions of leadership. That is the governor position. In the last election, we managed to elect three female governors, and they're showing us what they are, what basically they've been doing quite a good job. And I hope that with that, more counties across the country, more of the 47 counties will be able to trust women to positions as, such as the position of governor. And we just hope that, before 2022, that Parliament would take it upon themselves to implement the two-third gender principle. Maybe that way we would have a lot more women getting into the political space. And there's also a greater challenge around how political parties, the policies and laws that political parties have put in place, that there is a lot more that political parties need to do to ensure that the ground is level for women aspirants to be able to access positions of power.
All right, thank you, Madam Ruth. Elaborate. In fact, you took us through all the four corners of Kenya and also detailed to us your political journey. And I was particularly interested in what you were doing for Genda, a very relentless character in Kenyan politics, almost 80 years, but he found a way of finding romance with the sitting president, Uhuru, and they are still working together. But from what I can glean from the conversation so far between you and Madam Joyce, both of you have largely laid bare all the problems, the social, the economic, the political, the structural, and even the historical reasons why such balance exists in African parliaments. Now, with all that has been said, the issue of gender quota, and I'm coming back to Madam Joyce Bauer, and I'll give you, Madam Joyce, I'll give you only 2 minutes to make your arguments. Do you think that to create balance in our parliament, because with all the examples that we know, with all the reasons that we've been given, they continue to be there? Because if we look at Rwanda and what they are doing, looks like the quota thing is working for them. And that is the only way, because if you leave the issues to the men and the women, certainly the men would exploit the structural vulnerability of the woman. They would exploit the economic malleus of the woman. They would exploit the social inadequacy of the woman. And also they would tilt the historical scale to the side of the men. So do you think the quota argument is the way to go? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Quotas have worked effectively in some jurisdictions. But on a lighter side, let me say that our men folk who are largely in charge of all these bodies should actually make way or give way. But I personally, until recently, was never an adherent to the quota systems. I was actually all for a level playing field that allows for men and women to compete as effectively, as easily, and as generally as we do right from primary school to university. Because then we achieve respect, we achieve our competitiveness and our competitive edge, and everybody admits that indeed we have contested one another and the best has actually emerged. But be that as it may, recent thinking seems to convince me that maybe reasons why all these years later, and Ruth puts it beautifully, both Ghana and Kenya present very interesting case studies. We have yet to achieve a certain level of parity in our political landscape. I think the challenge is that, yes, the opportunities are there, but maybe the support systems are not as strong. There's a stereotyping of a typical woman who will be described as all masculine because you dare to compete with a man. There are also challenges to do with funding and lack of opportunity, especially when it comes to women, because we will not succumb to all the usual meanderings to be able to find funding to support these activities. And indeed, I encourage any government, and I'm happy that some governments actively actually sponsor female candidates, and some political parties do likewise. There is, as I indicated earlier, a deliberate effort by all political parties to encourage more female participation. But have they actually gone as far as they should? Have they provided funding? Have they reduced violence? Have they reduced the name calling? Have they created a certain environment that makes a female comfortable to well and be able to compete with the men folk? Have they advised the men to reduce the negativity, the invectives, and the condemnation that women suffer? Society itself judges the married and unmarried woman, the woman with children and the one without, the one with children in wedlock or outside. There is a whole myriad of lists, a long and ending list of all the failings of a female as opposed to the saintliness of our menfolk. I think if we are able to easily identify these challenges, remove the stumbling blocks, and return to a certain status quo, then only then will we be able to achieve fully what we anticipate for female participants. Indeed, the affirmative action is not the only solution. You could put the legislation in place, as other jurisdictions have proven, and still fail to attract the women that you need or to improve the numbers as you'd expect to. Whereas if we were to remove the stereotypes, remove the bottlenecks, and encourage deeper participation, provide an enabling environment, and this enabling environment can only be achieved through a partnership with our menfolk. And of course, women also, because we occupy a larger portion of our population, women ought to, as a duty, as an obligation erga omnes, as a responsibility, rise up and mobilize for other women, especially where you find a female standing, well qualified and competent. Other women should rally behind that woman, irrespective of even our political affiliation. And I've seen that done in some circumstances and has been done beautifully. The sky.
Thank you, Madam Joyce. I know how passionate you feel about these issues, but you know, I wanted to go quickly to Ruth, but I'll stay on this subject, especially the issue about other women identifying with the cause of their women. And in 2020, when President, the candidate you speak for, or you spoke for, you who you continue to speak for, elected or appointed Madam Genda the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, for her to be the running mate of John Dramani Mahama in the 2020 elections. We saw the reactions, the innuendos, the invectives. We also saw the way and manner her competencies were downplayed, and the issue about she being a woman emerged. And I also saw, or even read from one supposed gender activist from the Flagstaff House who came up or wrote some materials or literature, whatever it is, about the old revered professor. But if you looked at the data from the central region where Professor Genda hailed from, you saw that the NDC's votes had dipped in the 2020 elections. And one would ask, where was the magic? Was her appointment because of political expediency? Was it to tap into a certain demography? Or the NDC actually believed in the power of a woman to partner former President John Dramani Mahama or candidate John Dramani Mahama? So you in conclusion, the women do not believe in the leadership, quote unquote, in other women. At least I can say that for Ghana? I'll give you 2 minutes to react to that quickly, and I'll move to Ruth.
I believe strongly that for the NDC, there was every effort, every intention to appoint a female running mate. First and foremost, to satisfy quality and the balance that we require as a people. And indeed, we selected no meaner female than one who has lived life as an academic. And note, many young females, many of the feminists, very popular ones at that, stood up very tall to be counted in their support. I believe strongly that government on that occasion, clearly having been born out of a political party, lost a fantastic opportunity to rally around a female in that regard, even if that did not necessarily amount to votes per se. I believe that a certain positive outlook, even from the ruling government, who themselves had tried prior to winning the 2016 election to go for a female running mate, but one that had been shut down. But the question we should ask ourselves, especially, and I would always direct this conversation to our women folk out there, why is it that it is the women who do not come out fully to rally around other women? Statistics-wise, in Ghana alone, we have well over 51% of our population being women. So once more, the buck stops with us. What is it that will excite that female demographic? What is it that will awaken that level of, acceptance or acceptability? What is it that takes away the stereotype that one woman has for another? I personally mentor a lot of young women. I've had occasion where people will ask me, oh, but your mentee is dressing just like you. Oh, she's behaving like you. Oh, she acts just like you. There must be a good reason. It's because I don't mind that they act like me or dress like me or even behave like me. Because that is the real reasons why we choose to mentor young people. It is that whatever is good in you, whatever is positive, whatever examples you have to share, you should, one way or the other, impact positively on the young person's life. I think we can also start to mentor women across board to accept the fact that we actually must support one another, that a woman will not be successful if you don't have the backing of other women. I think one of the things that makes our men folk very, very, very competitive is that they have enormous support even from women. I think that is what is lacking on the other side. Let both men and women start to look at women differently in terms of leadership, in terms of participation, in terms of example, especially in terms of our ability to do better even than men in most, if not all cases.
Thank you, Madam Joyce. I'll come back to you and take your concluding remarks, but let me move quickly to Ruth and pick your thoughts quickly, considering the adversarial politics in Kenya and looking at the fact that it's been increasingly difficult to penetrate the legislative space. Do you think that the quota issue is the best way to go? And does that not also vitiate the conversation about competence and creating a level playing field? And all this mantra about what men can do better, it's become evidential that the woman can really not match the men shoulder to shoulder. Of course, considering the structural, the economic, social, and historical issues that exist. So how do you balance quota so that we do not also circumvent the competence of the woman? Because for what is happening in Uganda, a lot of women actually sit in the National Assembly. In Uganda, you have almost 600 members of parliament, and you have about 30 to 40% of that number being women. But you can only have the opportunity to serve in that legislative assembly if you belong to the ruling party and by way of a certain quota. In Kenya, what is happening? Do you think quota system is the way to go? You have 2 minutes, please.
First of all, I think we need to define what a level playing field really is. When we say level the playing field for both men and women to participate in politics, do we mean that, let the man compete, let the woman compete as equally as the man? Or do we mean that, when you have the woman and the man competing, all factors held constant, that the woman, if qualified or if better qualified than the man, would win an election? I think that is what we really need to know what a level playing field is for women in politics. Because what happens in Kenya is that you'd find, for instance, if let's say we have candidate A and candidate B, a man and a woman, and that the woman is actually better qualified, has more experience, can lead better, but put on the same race with a man, she would definitely lose. And in Kenya, even despite the introduction of different positions that were specifically the positions that were specially for women, we still had communities that were requesting to have those positions held by men. And that's where the gender quotas come in for Kenya, that we have had such a patriarchal system, a patriarchal system that society has been organized around, to an extent that we have communities in Kenya that, do not believe at all in a woman's capability to lead. And there were times when the Constitutional Review Committee was, just basically reviewing the Constitution and going across the country and educating various societies on these new clauses, and these new provisions and these new positions for women. For instance, the position of women representatives. The Constitutional Review Commission in Kenya reported that there were communities where they would go and educate the society and tell them that we have this new position that can only be held by women. And the community would request, is it possible for our community to have a man sit on that position? And that's where the gender quotas come in for Kenya. Whether it is the best way to ensure that women are involved in the political space is a different question altogether. And the answer for me to that is that gender quotas can only work best if they are given a time limit, where you say, for instance, we are having gender quotas implemented for, to allow women to get into positions of leadership for a particular period of time, like 10 years. Give it 10 years of operation so that the society can be able to experience the leadership of women. And then after that, scrap it off and let women now face it square with their male counterparts for various positions of leadership. And again, I would want to just comment about what Honorable Bauer has said, that, as much as we are talking about letting women fight it out with men equally, then there are certain, things that political parties must first of all put in place, certain policies that political parties have to put in place to ensure that the ground is favorable for women to vie equally, for the same positions as men. They have to address the questions of security of women aspirants. They have to address the questions of the affordability for the nomination fees for women aspirants, because those are questions and issues that women aspirants have to deal with when it comes to, getting to the nominations of various political parties. There are so many issues that political parties have to first resolve if we are to say, let's do away with gender quotas. But as it stands, political parties don't seem to have the political goodwill to be able to implement these changes or to be able to come up with these policies that would make the playing field level for women. And therefore that still, necessitates the implementation of gender quotas for a particular period of time and then the phasing out of the state.
Madam Ruth, thank you. But I'll stay on you and take your concluding remarks. And in your conclusion, if you can provide some alternatives to the structural issues that we have, because it doesn't look like the space is going to open anytime soon. There are so many young women out there who have the desire, they have the competence, they have the leadership skills, and they want to contribute to nation building. But the space continues to be closed. In 2 minutes, what should women do, or what should society do to help women to bring parity in our legislative and political spaces?
I think the first thing that women must do, and this is a responsibility that should be placed upon the women who are currently in leadership positions, is that they just have to deliver on their jobs. They have to deliver on the various positions that they now hold, to be able to give society reason to believe in women leadership. Because one of the complaints that society has given in Kenya, for example, has been that some of the women representatives who have been elected have been seen to pretty much bring about no change, no difference, and that has led to some communities believing that, you know, we don't need women in leadership positions. So we need to have the few women who are in leadership positions right now realize that we've come such a long way to have them sit in those various positions. And therefore, their first and foremost responsibility is to deliver to their maximum capability, to let the society believe that indeed women can actually lead. Second, we must have, you know, consistent conversations, and not just on online platforms, but have such conversations being taken to the lowest of you know, to the least educated members of the community, and have them realize that indeed women can lead. We should have examples, these examples of women leaders who are doing well, you know, not just within Kenya, but those who are doing well across the country, you know, examples of such women given to the community, so that community can actually see what women are doing across the world, what women leaders are delivering, you know, within across the country, and have that faith, just build up the faith of the society in the ability of women to lead. On the part of political parties must come up with stringent, you know, rules in place to ensure the security of women aspirants. They must be able to come to a point of, you know, negotiating and giving women some leeway when it comes to the amounts of money that women aspirants have to pay to vie for various political seats. Reduce that amount of money so that they can be able to, you know, to ensure that more women offer themselves up for leadership. And if it is possible, political parties should set up funds that can go towards supporting some of their stronger, you know, some of their strong female aspirants on the ground, offer them financial support for the various positions that they're vying for. And then generally Parliament, you know, Parliament in Kenya, for instance, in particular in Kenya, Parliament just needs to, you know, come up to a point of you know, of legislating the various laws that they ought to legislate to ensure that, you know, we have more spaces and more opportunities for women to engage in the political space. But what I would encourage any young woman out there who would want to vie is, you know, keep at it, keep going, regardless of the challenges that you will face, regardless of the backlash that the community will place on you, regardless of how tiresome the process can be. Keep at it, and, you know, never lose hope. And eventually you try once, you try the second time, you try the third time. They always say the third time is a charm. So even if you fail at first, keep going at it, keep engaging the community. When you lose your first opportunity, it is not a sign that you're not built for politics. Continue engaging, continue coming up with programs that are supposed to engage the community, that are supposed to be beneficial for the community, and eventually, hopefully, the community will believe in your ability to lead them at some point.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much, Madam Joyce. In 2 minutes, Ghana, the Ghanaian terrain, you know, very, very sketchy, and it's not even easy for the women. I beg your pardon, it's not easy for the men. And I remember in 2011, when wife of late President Rawlings, Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings, opted to run for the candidature of the NDC towards the 2012 elections. In Sunyani, that famous Sunyani Congress, she got 4%. 4% out of 100%. You would find that is another indication of the reticence of other women to support their own. I want to ask, in your concluding remarks, which humbly I would plead you do in 2 minutes because we are far beyond our time. Do you think there's any ray of hope for the Ghanaian woman, the young woman, to find any success in the political space, especially through elections, considering all the problems that we have? What alternatives exist for the Ghanaian woman in political participation?
I think there's more opportunity now for the Ghanaian women than there ever was in the past. At least certainly more opportunity now than in my mother's day. And of course, even more opportunities will come even as we grow older. I believe that the UN Commissioner for Gender and Women said it will take us 50 years. So whilst we are waiting for 50 years, what we should do first and foremost is that indeed we should allow for quotas. What these quotas will do is that they remove discrimination of all kinds. They also pave the way for underrepresentation of women. Indeed, in Ghana, Parliament has done a fantastic job where they started to pass legislations that encourage additions of women, where, for example, a board is by institutional representation and there's no female, then they must, of course, find a female well qualified by industry standards to participate on that board. And this has been going on for quite some time. But certainly, as I keep saying, women are our own best example. I think let's live up to expectations. Let's rise to the occasion. Above all, let's call on other females to give us all their support, irrespective. Once we end that stereotyping, I'm sure that women can and will certainly do better, and of course, encourage even more participation for an even better future. We are definitely all leading by example, but there's also a lot more we can do. If this can be achieved fully through affirmative action, then by all means, let us do it. If it can be achieved through the quota system, then by all means, let us do it. If this can be achieved through better funding, opportunities being given to female candidates by governments and political parties, then by all means, let us do it. What we should not be accused of is that not enough effort was made or has been made or will be made. So let's make an even better effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Joyce Bawa Mokhtari. But first of all, let me say a special thank you to the Gender Working Group, Gender International Affairs Working Group of the All Africa Students Union for putting together this platform for our eminent discussants to put across their experiences and also the insights into the issue of gender representation, bringing to bear on this enduring issue that we've been learning, speaking about, writing about since the 1970s, when it wasn't even gender studies, but rather women studies. And the highlight was the famous Beijing Conference or the Beijing Declaration. 20 years after that, what do we see? We still see the same problems, but we would continue to use platforms like this to discuss the issues and give rays of hope to young women who have the desire to contribute to nation building. This afternoon, we were joined by friends across the continent: Kenyans, Congolese, South Africans, Rwandans, Ghanaians, Ivorians, and everyone, because the All Africa Students Union has extensive and ubiquitous representation across all the 55 states on the continent. I also say thank you to the Secretary for Gender and International Relations for the All Africa Students Union, Madam Angel Mbusia, who joined us far away from Nairobi. And I say a special thank you to our Senior Programs Officer, Madam Veronica Giagu, and to Madam Ruth Ambogo, a Kenyan who is a governance expert, a lawyer, a youth and women advocate with over 5 years of extensive experience in championing and advocating for the rights of youth and women, with a special interest in the rights to inclusivity in political discourses, processes, appointments, economic welfare of the youth, as well as the consideration of youth interests in national policy and freedom from discrimination and marginalization. We were also joined by our own erudite, brilliant, smart, beautiful Madam Joyce Bawa Mokhtari, who is the special aide to the former President of the Republic, John Dramani Mahama, and she served as a former Deputy Minister of Transport and also was the head of Legal Department and Solicitor Secretary for the Ghana Shippers Authority, with an extensive understanding of the legal terrain with an LLB, qualifying certificate in law, a Master of Laws degree in International Maritime and Transport Law, and all these degrees she got from various universities in Malta, in London. She also has an additional Master of Arts degree in International Peace and Security from the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center. A woman, I beg your pardon. This certainly is a woman of many parts with so much diversity regards her academic qualifications and all that she can do. We thank you so much, Madam Joyce Bauer, for making time to join us this afternoon and with the speed with which you responded to the call of the ladies from the All Africa Students Union. And to you, Madam Ruth, joining us far away in Kenya, we thank you so much. This was quite an interesting discussion, but not exhaustive. We would come back to both of you for a part 2. As and when you are ready, we are always ready to hold these discussions, because these days, the young people of the continent are deprived of insightful conversations of this nature. And it's really, really difficult getting experts in these areas to speak to our young people. We thank you so much for the time, and have a good afternoon to you. And thank everyone who joined us from the continent for the time spent. And I can say that we learned a lot. I learned a lot because in my years of studying at the University of Ghana, I took some courses in gender and African development, and I identified with some of the conversations. And next time we have you, would go into other discussions and dimensions within the gender